Dr. Thongchai, an expert on urban planning, urbanization from what the name of department is so long, Department of Town and Country Planning. Correct me if I'm wrong. Town and Country Planning and
Public Works.
Public Works and Town and Country Planning. Oh, that's the one now. So now change it. Wait for a few minutes. Normally there should be our friend from Philippines coming in this time. So there were about 5 or 6 people. Then when we start, and then there may be 2 more coming from Uzbekistan a bit later. So today we discuss about urbanization.
Yes.
As you know, urbanization, you need a lot of experience in many multidisciplinary, including anything from architecture, human geography, archaeological basics, economics, etc.
I think that is now for the development of the urbanization is now we are thinking about the green city. That is one.
Oh, definitely. You can
the new concept, and that meaning that very important that green city, that is one that we talking about the environment, human waste or solid waste, and many things that we concerning on the green city. That is one.
Yeah, you can discuss with Dr. Thongchai in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Shall we start now, Dr. Thongchai?
Yes.
We're expecting a few more people coming in. So, I will share the screen from here, and then you give a talk. And how do I share the screen from here, right? Which one first? There are 2 of them, right?
Start with the historical perspective.
The one with the historical
with history.
Yeah, and I got history. Is this one? There are 2 of them.
No. This is the second part.
Okay, second part. Okay. So
This one.
Okay.
All right. Let me start. If I'm teaching, if my class, it is the master program, I have to start with the history. History is very important for urban planner. The concept is very clear. We learn the past because we have to design the future. Anytime you have to deal with the urbanization, you have to start with the background, how the city or town came along with other problems. And the case of Songkhla Lake Basin is very interesting in terms of history, very long history. I believe that more than 2,000 or 3,000 years that the people have been here and learned the nature, learned the local resources, and know really well how to make the best use of available resources. Next, please. Next, please. Yes. When we talk about the water resources, it is very simple reason that people move to live next or close to the water resources. Mainly, they choose the environment, particularly its domains of the river basin. And because of the potentials and the physical domains of the environment, you can understand how those settlements could be developed. And you can see the house form up to the very complicated design like architecture. And you can see the artifacts that could be a part of local resources. You can notice many things about their society. You can learn what they eat, that means the food, and extend to the culture. The culture around them, what they developed, that is a part of the adaptation that they learn, the environment. Next, please. And the south of Thailand became one of the most interesting regions in Southeast Asia. And I have discussed it with some archaeologists, some people who have been in this field doing on the research about the southern part of Thailand and cross the ocean, the sea, to study many things in Indonesia, in Sumatra, in Java, and sometimes try to understand the nearby countries like India and Myanmar and Cambodia. It is quite clear that this region, the south of Thailand, or the peninsula of the Southeast Asia, they were really rich in terms of the culture. And what we found in the ground and even in the sea, we found many interesting objects. On the picture, you can see some decorations that you may go back to 1200 BC. We understand that the south of Thailand, they found many good materials to make or to change the way of their live, the living conditions. That is what we found. It is the tools made by iron, made by copper, made by tin, and other metal and materials. And what they think about the south of Thailand, some people believe that the name of Suvarnabhumi, or the land of gold, there should be some gold there. But in the views of some scholars, the term of the land of gold, it doesn't mean by that way. The land is not full of the valuable minerals, but the land is fertile for agriculture. They can grow everything in this area, in this region. What we found about the artifacts that the archaeologists could insist the basic assumption that the early periods of the communication, of transportation in Malaya Peninsula is concerned with the trade. What they sell, what they would like to do most is to exchange the products. The traders from India cross the ocean to the south of Thailand, to the Malaya Peninsula. They came here to find something, that is the materials. And you can see that the early periods of the trade, the commercial business, we call it Khao Sam Keo. Khao Sam Keo, maybe, I think many archaeologists believe that it is the first place that they set down the trade station, and became very important later, and extend to have more and more stations down to the south of Malaya Peninsula, particularly in Singapore. So what we found, it is the metal drum on the right. That is drum, not table, drum. It's made of copper and tin. This is very interesting because they put the the textures. They put many things inside. All right, this picture on the left, you can see the map of the Malaya Peninsula. They had many stations, trade stations. That's why we believe that the transportation in the south, all right, they sail by boat far away from this region, not only India, but from China. And the interesting question is about who were those people and what they traded. In the south, we could find some containers made of metal, made of copper, made of iron, and we found that they came here. They brought some rare things that we could not have in the region. For example, the valuable coins, the golden coins, that they can buy things in the south of Thailand and across the ocean to Sumatra Island. That's the same way of commercial business activities were going on. They came here. We found that the way back to India, to China, they bought rice. Rice became the most important goods that the demand and supply was going higher and higher since the first wave of the traders from India and China. You can imagine that 2,000 years ago, they traveled far away from home, 1,000 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers. They came here to the south of Thailand, to the Malaya Peninsula, to buy things. This is very interesting. At the same time, they brought knowledge. They brought the religious beliefs and became a part of societal changes. And as I mentioned earlier, the mineral resources, for example, tin and lead, what they want is to make some containers. And what we found is interesting that they produced and made the agricultural tools and sometimes weapons, sword, knife, or any tools that they have to use in the daily life. And the objects that we found in the sea and in the land by archaeologists, it is really important that they've tried to find the answers of the term of the golden land. And some theories said about the traders from India, from China, they came here to bring back the minerals from the Malaya Peninsula and back to make coins. And what we found the most interesting, the coins from Europe with the face of the King Alexander. Very interesting. In other words, it can prove that around here, around Songkhla Lake Basin, once it was really important in terms of the center of the commerce, of the trading and changes station, the changing station, when they have to exchange goods, and sometimes they use golden coins to buy things. The theory that said about the trade route, they are talking about the Silk Road that is very popular. When the Chinese traders, they use the inland route bring the products. For example, silks, cloth from China to sell in the Middle East, to sell in Europe. And it is interesting that it's not only the Silk Road on land, on the hinterland, but they believe and insist that the Silk Road is not only exists in the hinterland in China, but you can see the Silk route in the sea, around the sea, from China down to Malayan Peninsula and up to India and up to the Middle East. So it is the transition zone and the exchange zone between the East and the West. So the map on the left, you can see that the people in the old days, 2,000 years ago, they travel far from home to sell and can earn a lot of money. That's why sometimes they can bring more and more goods. Not the ship, the boat became bigger and bigger and can travel further from 1,000 kilometers up to 1,000 kilometers. And anyway, they have to stop somewhere to have a rest, to find some more food, put into the boat, into the ship, and then continue their journey to the last destination. What is interesting for the Songkla Lake Basin, it is the maritime Silk Road that is different from the Silk Road in the hinterland. They had to use horses, camels, and sometimes other animals to bring goods to the market. The problem is travel by road in the hinterland. They could not bring a lot of goods, put more things on the back of the horse or camels. Compared with the maritime Silk Road, if the boat or the ship is big, they can bring more and more goods. So that's why we are talking about the trade routes by sea and how important that the maritime Silk Road has become the most interesting topics for the researchers. The urban researchers are interested in these aspect of trade, the trade by sea, the maritime Silk Road. And you can see that they learn a lot about how to sail from the Middle East to China and from China to India. They learn the astrology. 2,000 years ago, they knew a lot how to sail by looking at the sky. The sky, the stars in the sky can bring them to anywhere. So this is a new knowledge compared with the local people. If they don't have skill like this, they cannot travel by boat from the Middle East to India to China. So this is good things about how they learn more and more and bring the knowledge. And that's why in Cambodia, you can see that they could get the knowledge from the Middle East, from Persia. For example, the irrigation. You can understand that many places in Thailand, in Laos, in Cambodia, you can see very old irrigation systems in these countries. And some researchers in Thailand believe that these technologies, this knowledge came from the Middle East or India. That is very interesting. What we would like to learn more is about when the traders came into this region. It's not only to sail by boat from India, from the Middle East to Malaya Peninsula and up to the Gulf of Thailand, to Ayutthaya, to Bangkok, to China, to Vietnam. They worked hard to find the shortest route, and then they found that because of the peninsula is very large and had a long distance from the corner of the Singapore up to the Gulf of Thailand, to Bangkok, to Ayutthaya. So they tried to find the better way to spend less time from the Indian Ocean, cross somewhere to the South China Sea. And very lucky that some archaeological studies can show us that some boats we found on the bed of the sea with the period of time maybe more than 2,000 years. They found many artifacts and objects still left in the boat, in the wrecked boat that found in the Grak Canal. Grak Canal is the upper part of Malaya Peninsula. If you imagine that this area cut short from the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea, if traveled by foot, by horse or elephants from this area, it can cut short on the distance in land maybe around 60 up to 80 kilometers. That's a very short, and maybe around 7 or 10 days that they can cross the peninsula to the Gulf of Thailand. So this is very interesting that the traders had a strong attempt to do the good business, spend less time, and could bring more goods to the market. And it's not only Grak canals. And we believe that the short trade routes is not only one or two routes. Grak Canal is a good example, but we found that there are more than 4 or 5 shorter trade routes cross the land from the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. And some researchers found the old papers. It says about problems in the Malaya Strait for the traders who sail the boats from the India to China. This problem is really critical because the paper said about the pilots that is very dangerous for the traders. So that's why the charter routes on the Malaya Peninsula, crossing somewhere that includes the Songkhla Lake Basin. And next, we will see that how the towns and cities around the Songkhla Lake Basin could be developed very fast during the past centuries. As I mentioned earlier, the traders in those days, 2,000 years ago, they did not came here just to buy things and sell things, but they brought the knowledge, not only the knowledge, but the culture, the art, and the religions, the belief. And from Indian Ocean, there are many towns along the coast. And today you can see the old towns in India. The functions is the port towns. And from there, you can understand it, how they can sail the boat to Thailand, to the Malaya Peninsula, and up to many places in Java, in Indonesia, and up to Vietnam and China. So during the past centuries, you can see good development along the coast from Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. Suppose that we would like to focus on the region of the Songkhla Lake Basin. You can see many good examples of the old cities around the trade routes, not only in the Malaya Peninsula, but you can see the same pictures in Aceh, in Sumatra Island. We believe that maybe nearly 100 old towns that got involved with the trading activities in this region. A good example, it is a Patani. This is very interesting because the traders had the trade station here. And you can see the shape and the geography of the Pattani. And it's the same theory that once Songkhla Lake Basin, the geography looked like this: the open ocean, and because of the sediments from the sand and the clay from the river, and then they made the peninsula like this. And after that, it was closed and became the Songkhla Lake. So the same principle to explain how the Songkhla Lake look like today. And it is really interesting because of the changes in geography. It took not 10 or 20 years, but 100 years to shape the land like this. And today, Pattani is still important in terms of the center of the religions in the south of Thailand. And in the old days, they sailed the boat to Pattani Bay because of the good geography. The peninsula like that can protect a strong wind from the open sea, and so that the boats and ships were safe from the big wave, and they can find the fresh water from the hinterland, and they can buy some more food and then continue their journey to another trade stations. For some sociologists, they are interested in civilizations in the south. What we found in the south of Thailand, in Thai we call it Sivichaya, or in English you can see that Sivichaya. It is a very old ancient empire, and the civilizations was really what we call it, the boom, or perhaps the best period of this empire. It is 11th and 12th centuries. Many questions came along with the name of Sriwijaya empires. Some scholars would like to make a clear picture of how the people moved to live in this area, how it became the big settlements where not only one or 2,000 inhabitants in the town. And it is believed that once in this area, the empire could be big, very big, so that nearly 1 million people live in these areas. And until now, after have discussed with the famous scholars in the Thai universities, nobody knows and have a big question and many arguments on what happened to Sriwijaya empires. It was written on the manuscripts, old manuscripts, on the walls in the temples, on the walls in the old pagodas, said many things about how rich they were in the 11th and 12th centuries, very short period of civilizations compared with other kingdoms, other empires in Southeast Asia. What we learned is not only about how they could bring the old beliefs from India to this region. And anyhow, we still believe that in Sriwijaya was the beginning and the first step of Buddhism came into this region. However, it's really sad that the archaeological evidence, very few of them, could be found in the south of Thailand or down to the end of Malaya Peninsula. We thought that Sriwijaya empires covered not only the south of Thailand and the Songkhla Lake Basin, but this empire got extended influences to Indonesia, to Bali, where you can see many old, old pagodas with the shape, with the form and the architecture, not different from you can see in India. A good example is still good for the people who are interested in Buddhism. That is Nakhon Si Thammarat. Nakhon Si Thammarat is another trade station in the old days under the administration of the Srivichai kingdom empire. We found some old manuscripts that the people from Sri Lanka, from India, from many areas around there, they travel by boat, by horse, by elephant to Nakhon Si Thammarat to practice Buddhism, to not only the traders but the ordinary peoples. They came here during the religious festivals. That is interesting that these old cities, we can explain many many things about how development of the settlements in the south of of the peninsula, and perhaps the geographical domains of the south of Thailand with the good locations. That is very interesting that Nakhon Si Thammarat down to the Songkhla Lake basins, they were not dominant in terms of the materials like ore, tin, or some other materials, silver or beads. The question is, what the traders in this region from Chaya to Nakhon Si Thammarat down to Songkhla, what they had in terms of the trading exchange, and what the archaeologists believe the early settlements, the first, or perhaps the first, the settlements in Songkhla Lake Basin. It is the name of a small town, Pattalung. Pattalung, once it was a port, an inland port, where the traders from the Indian Ocean came down to the Malaya Peninsula. They brought the goods to Pattalung, and Pattalung was the first trade station next to the Songkhla Lake Basin. I discussed with some scholars who are archaeologists. They told me that, very sad story, that they got only some manuscripts to insist that Pattalung was one of the first inland ports around the Songkhla Lake basins. But just the questions, what happened to Pattalung? Why Pattalung was not important for the coming year, for the 18th or 19th centuries? And archaeologists said, because we could not find anything to prove the theories or prove our assumptions, only arguments against the old theories. What is the good information to explain how the settlements around the Songkhla Lake could develop themselves very quickly? As I told you, that they did not have the valuable materials, the minerals, like the towns in along the Andaman Seas. What we have a strong belief, it is about the land. The land was very fertile to grow rice, and from Songkhla Lake Basin up to Nakhon Si Thammarat, it was written in many manuscripts that these areas around Songkhla Lake basins, in the old days, it was a region of rice production, the rice production, and after the trade became the bigger market, it became the bigger market the markets not only in this region, in the peninsular region, but it became the good demands from China and from India because of the quality of the rice in this area. And that's why more than 1,000 years, that rice was the best export goods from this region, Songkhla Lake Basin. Until today, some scholars in the field of agriculture try to bring back the old species of rice, try to have a demonstration plantations to show that it is the rice from 1,000 years ago, and it became the successful story that today the good rice from Patrum has become popular in the Thai, not only in the Thai market, but also the overseas markets, the good quality of rice from Patrum. And I think if you have chance to visit Songkhla one day, don't forget to try the local rice from Patrum. And let me tell you first, the price is very high, not the price that available in the general supermarket. And as I mentioned about the trading routes, the more traders, and particularly the higher demands of goods, that very common picture that the peninsulas of the Malaya Peninsulas, along the Songkhla Lake Basin down to Singapore, it became very busy areas for the trade routes from India to China, from China to India. More boats come around, more ships, the bigger ships, and the large amounts of goods, of the products came into this region. Certainly, yes, these activities, commercial activities, could be the magnet, could be the driving force to bring more people to live in this region. That's why many towns in this region became bigger, and some scholars believe that in a certain period of time, perhaps since 12 centuries, the highest, the biggest picture of how these towns and cities became the urbanization, like like a city with the people, 100,000 to live in these cities and towns, could be around 16th or 17th centuries. The problem is when the Sriwijaya civilization disappeared before, I think we believe that before the 13th centuries, it was replaced by the new civilization, Tararavadi. It is the completely and totally different pictures compared with the former civilizations, because Tararavadi empires was the big influences in terms of culture, art, knowledge, and technologies. Until today, many scholars still have the arguments on how and why these big civilizations disappeared. Even they disappeared, but the activities the activities of the commercial business still remain and continue with the higher demand of rice. And that's why we could find some containers like pots, the iron pots, iron pans, we found in the sea. From the archaeological points of view, that's why they can explain how the Thai people who live in this region changed the way of cooking. If you are interested in cuisine or if you enjoy cooking, you may learn that during the 13th, 14th centuries, the Thai people, the Thai society, the way they cooked is not like today. They have they don't have the spicy food. They don't have the great varieties of the cooking recipes. Just the tools. I mentioned earlier very often about tools made of irons. That's the pan and pots. Before that, the Thai in the rural areas, they use an earthen jar, earthen pot. But because of the influences of the trading activities, the Chinese brought pans into the region, and the Indian traders, they brought pans into the region too. But you can notice that the pan in India and the pan in China, we call it wok. In China, in English, you call it wok. So the Thai people use the Chinese pan and pot or wok more than the Indian cooking tools, and that influenced the way of living more consequently. Certainly, the trade routes and the economic activities became much larger than before. And when the traders brought more goods, that means they brought more coins, golden coins, to buy things back home. And that's why if you go to the museum in Bangkok or in Vietnam, or even in Malaysia and Singapore, you can see the coins like this, the artifacts that can prove that how big were the markets in those days. And it is really interesting that these coins can tell us many stories about how the people in those days developed themselves and could make big profits from the resources in these regions. And the big changes happened when the first European group, in fact, both they are Portuguese, could sail from Europe past the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa to the Indian Ocean. That is around the early years of the 16th centuries. The Portuguese were the first European people who came into Asia. They came along with new things, and they arrived with the trade, with the commercial interest. At the same time, they came with military power. They got guns, they got weapons, modern weapons. And that's the beginning that they start to occupy the land in Malaya Peninsula. And there's good story of how the Malacca, the ancient town in Malaysia, became the first trade station for the European traders, and very clear picture of the permanent settlements of the Portuguese traders. It was in 1511. Since then, It's not only the Portuguese. The Portuguese went back home, brought the goods from Southeast Asia, and what they brought back. Interesting is they brought the local agricultural products, the best and then most valuable products from the Southeast Asia. It is pepper. They use pepper and other things for cooking, and back to sell in Europe, in the European markets. And that's a starting point of new centuries. That is the centuries of colonization. The Dutch came along after they found that the pepper they got from the Portuguese came from the Southeast Asia. So the Dutch were the smarter traders. They sailed the boats and ships from the Netherlands, followed the same route of the Portuguese traders. That is different that the Portuguese occupied just some towns in the Malaya Peninsula. The Dutch did not do the same. The Dutch came into the region with the stronger military power and start the big wave of colonialism to the islands in Southeast Asia, and they can occupy the most areas of Indonesian islands, Sumatra, Java, and other small islands, including Borneo, that the starting points of colonialism in Southeast Asia. But it's not only Portuguese and Dutch who were the next. The most powerful European country who came into this region with the bigger army, the bigger and stronger, more powerful military forces. It is the British traders. In 1785, the British occupied the small island in the Malayan Strait. It is Penang. Penang was the first one of the first British occupied territory. The British did not stop just Penang, but continued to invade the Malaya Straits, and then occupy Malacca in 1795 and Singapore in 1819. And because of these European influences, what they left in these settlements along the south coast of the peninsulas, that is the architecture. You can see the Portuguese architecture in Phuket, in Aceh, in Malacca, and down to Singapore. British came into the region with this bigger interest to bring back the materials to the England, to the Britain, because at that moment it was the period of industrial revolution. As you may know about the industrial revolution, they can produce more products, they can produce more things. What they did not have, it is the raw materials. So that's why the European countries moved to the overseas lands, America, Africa, and Asia, to find more materials and bring materials back home. After more and more European countries came into the region, it became the political pressure to Ayutthaya Kingdom, and the colonialism became a threat to the Siamese authorities. Even the king in the Ayutthaya tried to make a good profit from the traders from European countries, but they learned how to avoid the conflicts between different European traders. And that's why the political direction from Ayutthaya has changed vastly later on. Next, yes. They built the fortress and try and use the European technology. And this is another evidence that you can see the fortress built by the French during the 1685 to 1687. The fortress is still there. If you come to Songkhla, just cross the lake, you can see the fort built by the French engineer. So this is the influence. We called it political influence that forced the kingdom of Ayutthaya had to do something to stop or against the European militaries. And during the 18th centuries, Songkhla became the big urban growth center because not of the political support from Bangkok, from Ayutthaya. It was located in a good location that could be the good location for political control. And this is why Songkhla became the most important center for the government in Bangkok, because they want to have the center of somewhere in the south, and Songkhla was chosen. Big changes came into the south of Thailand, as I mentioned earlier about the Industrial Revolution. The new invention came into the market, that is the automobile, the car. The first car produced in the late 19th centuries. What the market in Europe need most, it is the materials to make tires, and it became one of the new products that they want in the European market, that is rubber. As I mentioned about the colonialism occupied by the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and came along with the French. They started a business to bring the materials back to the European country, the markets. It is started plantation, rubber plantations, and that stimulated the local economy vastly. And Songkhla became the local economic center. And the higher demand of the rubber in the European market, that is the key factor that forced to have to need more labor forces. So at the time, they want labor forces, how they can get the workers. The population in Southeast Asia not many enough for these new sectors. So there's a beginning of the to bring the workers from the overseas as the laborers. Those are Chinese. The Chinese workers came into this region as the biggest group. They work in the mines. They work to build the railways. They work in the rubber plantations. And after that, they became powerful in terms of economic members. After that, they did not go back home. They did not go back to China, but they settled down around the Songkhla Lake until today. Hat Yai is a good example. And that stimulate the economic activities, the boom of the rubber market and other products that brought the more people into the Songkhla Lake basins. And certainly it changed the land use around the regions. Songkhla, Patharung, down to Trang, to Pattani, and to Srinakhon Sri Thammarat. When more people move in, that means they want more land. That causes another problem, deforestation. And you can see the picture that the south may be not different, but less than the north and northeast when we lost the forest because of the market. The British want timbers from Thailand. And at the same time, the farmers want more land to grow rice and rubber. And that's why we are talking about when more people move into the region. That means the bigger town, the bigger cities, the more people who live in. And it's not only along the coast like 18th, 16th centuries, but today they move to upstream and cause new problems of the upstream deforestation. Yes, we will continue the second session. In this picture, you can see the north part of Songkhla Lake, the landscape and the geography. You can see that this is a good example of how the geography is changing all the time. When I was undergrad student, I remember that these areas were full of the mangrove with the good quality of the fishing products. But today, you can notice that no mangrove, and we will discuss more about the impacts of the rapid urbanization along the lake basin, how a great number of people flow into the region, and what they are doing or have been done cause them so many problems, particularly environmental problems. And the case of these areas, not far from this coast, is this very sad story that the people who live around the lake, the Songkhla Lake, up to the upstream, according to the a great number of people moving to live in the cities around here, they throw away the rubbish. So the biggest problem in this area, it is the dumping ground. The biggest dumping ground in the south of Thailand is there, Nakhon Sri Thammarat. And some scholars made the calculation that the mountains of the solid waste from the towns and cities around there, could be more than 100 million tons. Could be more than 100 million tons. So how to get rid of the mountains of the rubbish that has been there for 10 years. The second period of my presentation, we will move to the modern urbanization. How the south of Thailand down to the Malaysian border, what were changes in terms of urbanization? The modern urbanization, back to the papers, they said they start the modern urbanization when the railway, the South Railway was developed, started by the end of 18th centuries, and the construction was completed in 1919, and that is very convenient for the people from Bangkok can travel to Malaysia by train. It took around 18 hours. And because of the railways development, the railway brought a new changes into this region. Along the railway, you can see the new settlements. If it is the old town became a city. This is the impacts of the modern transportation brought into the south of Thailand. And the best way to understand why and how the urbanization in the south could change so fast like that. The conclusion is really simple. That is the impact of the modern transportation. The transportation like railway can bring not only the people down to the south and the south to Bangkok, and it became the bridge between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. They extend the railway tracks to both sides of the coast. Just sad story that during the Second World War, the Japanese army built a railway from from the Gulf of Thailand to the Indian Ocean. But after the Second World War, the Allies forced the Thai government to break down and stop using the railway on the Andaman coast. And the railway got influences, had influences the development in the south from 1920 until the modern transportation was developed around 1970s and 80s. That is the highways from Bangkok to the south of Thailand. That people changed their way of traveling from by train to by car and by plane later. The clear picture how the railway had influences on urbanization. Any station the train stops, you can see development. So big stations mean big cities. And from Bangkok to the south, to the Malaysian border, more than 5 or 6 big cities with a population more than 200,000 inhabitants, like more than nearly 100,000 inhabitants. For example, Surat Thani, Nakhon Si Thammarat, Hat Yai, Phuket, yes. No, not Phuket, but down to Sungai Kolok, yes. After the natural resources like tin, lead, and other the minerals were dug until nothing left. There is nothing left for the people who work in the mine. The new products that the people in the south can earn for a living, it is from agriculture and agricultural products that has become the primary income for the people in the south. It is a rubber plantation, and the rubber plantation could make a lot of money. Come along with the second choice, that is the oil palm. You can understand that when the products, the price of these products are high, the people want more, the farmers want more land. That's a problem because land is the limited resources. We used to have a big forest in the south, or very wonderful and beautiful forest in the south. But every year, my team doing the field work in the south has to write a report that more and more they found it is the deforestation. And it's not surprising to tell you that Thailand is the third largest producer of vegetable oil produced from the palm oil. And the bigger one is in Indonesia and Malaysia. So the problem is they cut down more trees, and because oil palm is the single species that they have to cut down and clear the ground just only for the oil palms. So the impacts were on the ground pollution, and some people don't care much about this problem. But for us, for the scholars, for the people who work in the research work, this is really serious and becoming more critical. This is a picture that happened around 7 or 8 years ago. As I mentioned about the impacts of the larger plantations, the farmers want more land, so they went up to the upstream and cut down the trees. So this deforestation, as you may know well, that the impacts of deforestation, it is the natural disaster. This picture can tell you that how bad was the situation in that year. The water from upstream, they did not have big trees to slow down the water from the hill, and the great amount of water, the flooding water, came down. Not only water, but also the big logs, and of each this log, maybe 2 tons up to 5 tons, very big and heavy log, and destroyed the whole villages. And in that year, I could not remember how was these casualties. I remember that more than 100 people were killed after the great disaster like this. The problems of the environmental deterioration or the bad situations of the poor upstream ecology. I would like to stress this keyword, ecology, because after the biggest deforestation around 20-30 years ago, almost every year, it became the big news that the south of Thailand have the problem of the flash flood, the landslides, coastal erosion, and a lot of problems, environmental problems. And the people in the research work office, the people from the big universities, point the fingers to the biggest problem of the oil palm and the rubber plantations that caused this disaster. And down to the coast, it's not only the plantation like those, but one more big problem for the ecological concern, ecological casualties. It is the shrimp farms. The shrimp farms along the coast, yes, it can make a big money because of the good market. The Japanese markets want more and more shrimp from Thailand. And today, it's not only shrimp farms in Thailand that could be a good market, send the shrimp to Japanese markets. But you can see the same picture, the shrimp farms along the coast in Vietnam, in Cambodia, and even in Indonesia, some islands, and up to today in Myanmar too. So this is the disaster for the ecological systems, because the mangroves disappeared and replaced by the shrimp farms. When I travel down to the south, anytime I'm flying above the south coast, I have to take pictures of the southern coast, and you can see like this. On the left, you can see very critical situation of the coastal erosion. And what the government did, to me, is not a smart solution. They built up the barriers, the concrete barriers in the sea. And the picture is like this, compared with on the right. They tried it many ways to solve the problem of coastal erosions. I remember they start the program like this to prevent erosion maybe 15 years ago. But today, the problems are still there. It's not easy when we destroy the nature so badly, and we could not bring everything back as the same it used to be within a few years. That is at least maybe 50 years that you can restore or bring back the good ecological system into the region. And you can see that, okay. And the greatest impact of the economic activities when the economy is booming in the south. You can see the picture of a fast-growing city like Hat Yai. Hat Yai became the economic center in the south first because it is the center of the railway junction, the railway junction. The people who travel to the south, if they would like to go to Malaysia, they can go down very easily to the border. And if they would like to continue the journey to the another part of Malaysia, they can connect the train from here down to Sungai Golok. So Hat Yai has become the economic center, the most important center in the east coast of in the south coast of Thailand. And you can see that the commercial activities, very easy to notice how important it is. You can see the number of banks, commercial banks in Hat Yai. I don't know, but maybe a lot of banks are located in this city. But the city was growing too fast, and without any legal control, no regulations to say yes, here you can build the buildings, or no, here you cannot build the buildings. Without the regulation, effective regulations, the city of Hat Yai got problems because of its largest urbanization in the south. In terms of economic center, economic hub, transportation hub, more and more people move to live in this city. And the poor reason of its location, it is on the floodplain. The floodplain, in fact, for the planners, it is forbidden to develop any kind of building on the floodplain, because when the water flows down from the mountain down to the sea, you should not have anything to block it or to change the direction of the stream or the river. And Hat Yai is a good example of very poor understanding about the nature. Songkhla Basin is the sorry, my dog is complaining. And Hat Yai is a good example for my class when they have to teach about the urban flood problems. And on the left, it is my study, and on the right, it is the satellite image to show the areas where it was flooded in the year 2010. Very clear picture that the whole city is located on the floodplain, where the larger amount of water has surpassed the center of the city. And this is a picture of Hat Yai. you can notice 2 different years, 2000 and 2010. And it was my argument when they tried to solve the flood problem for Hat Yai. And they tried to develop the diversion channel for Hat Yai. They had many reasons that, all right, they have to protect the economic center in the south. They didn't mind that how much they had to pay. So my first argument was on the diversion channel. The diversion channel was completed in 2009 and got the certificate of the best engineering innovation. I stress this keyword, the best engineering innovation. Innovation, that means the new idea, the new thing. But after they got the prize and the certificate in the year 2009, 2010, what they call the best engineering innovation, it didn't work. It was not functional. But just 1 year later, Hat Yai city was underwater again, and the greater damages compared with the 10 years the crisis before. And my arguments continue on the future of the urbanization in the South. My arguments continue in terms of the higher degree of risk. When the urban centers could not be controlled by the government and let the private sector do whatever they would like to do, and they did not care about infrastructure, how the existing infrastructure could be extended. When more and more activities came into the town, came into the cities, and that increased more urban problems. And even my arguments were discussed on the paper, on the media, in the class, and many times that I explain and show the pictures like on the right, that if they could not change the systems of these public services, should be good enough for the role and functions of these urban centers. We are spending time and wasting time and money to solve the problem of urbanization in the South. And this is an example of how the engineering solutions were introduced in the year 2005 and 6. They tried to develop the concrete walls, try to control the nature. And it is really common for me and could be my tradition to tell the students in my class that we as humans, we cannot win the nature. We have to pay respect to the nature. Nobody can control the nature. Forget the keyword that we can control the nature, because the fact is, anytime we have the problems against nature, the natural disaster, we should come back and think twice why we could not solve the problem. And Hat Yai is a good case. I don't know how much the concrete has been poured down in the city to protect the flood during the monsoon seasons. And I told Ajahn Chachai and many people at the university in Songkhla, in Hat Yai, about the coming disasters. I believe that the bigger floods will come to the south of Thailand. Again, if we don't understand why the environmental problems should be solved wisely. It's not about the money that the government can pay. They don't mind how much they have to pay just to see the good solution quickly. But I said, no, when we have to solve the problem about the nature, you can buy everything except time. if we have to revise and restore the ecology, no matter how much you can have in the pocket, it doesn't matter about money, but about how much we understand the nature. My serious concern is about the urban population density. If you look at this map on the left, yes, the urbanization look like this, very high density because the land prices in the city are high, and how the private sector could make the best profit from the land. Its only way is to build bigger buildings, higher, more space, and compare with the picture in the right, on the right. The dark colors, red and dark orange and dark red, that represent the high density of the urban population. If you look at the south in particular, it is around here, Songkhla Lake, up to the north to Nakhon Si Thammarat and down to Songkhla. These areas are the highest density of urbanization. What are the impacts come along with the highest the urban density? That means we have to take care of a bigger group of people away, to save these people away from a natural disaster, from storm, from typhoon, from flash flood, from landslides, from coastal erosions. So that's why on the left, it says very clear that many districts in the south, they identified as the most dangerous districts, not good for settlements, not good for the people to live. And on the right, the graphic presentation on the right picture, you can see the flood in 2011 compared with the opposite problems, that is drought. You can see that how the keywords came into the Thai society some years ago. It is about climate change. When the same area, the same province, the same district, just some months ago, everywhere was underwater, was flooded. But later on, some few months later, those areas were dry at the level of drought, no water to drink, no water to feed animals. What does it mean? That means the climate change is really serious. It should be our concern. Everyone in the society should be their concern. And the similar picture that happened again and again in 2011. This picture is not far from Songkhla, just some maybe 50 or 60 kilometers from Songkhla Lake. This is the impacts and the consequences of why deforestation is a big concern. When the upstream forest disappeared, and this is a picture of environmental damages. If they don't understand the impacts of the climate change in terms of the damage like this, it's not easy to bring back the good environment to the upstream, downstream, to the rural, and including the urbanization in the urban area. And the year of 2010 and 11, it was recorded as the most strongest rainfall in a lifetime of the people, because just few days, 5 days, the rainfall, how much? 1,000 millimeters. 1,000 millimeters. That could be that compared with the total rainfalls in the year, about 1,200 or 1,500 rainfalls, and the highest figures maybe in Lanong, 3,000. But just 5 days, they got rainfall 1,000 millimeters. This is a part of the impact of the climate change. And I have discussed this issue very often when I travel down and do the fieldwork in the south from both sides of the peninsula, Andaman Ocean, Andaman Sea, and the Gulf of Thailand, to tell the people from the governor, the high-level officers like the governor in many provinces, and down to the local people in the village, to tell them that this is really serious. If they don't do anything, they don't change their daily life, their style of living, and keep doing the same thing, cut down the trees, and don't care much what will happen next. They will get the consequences, not so soon. What we discuss more is about transportation. I mentioned that the early years of the railway development, the people from Bangkok can travel to the Malaysian border within 18 or 20 hours. But today, it is very more convenient because you can travel by plane. And in the south of Thailand, I can count on the number of the airports in the south. That is because the government would like to stimulate the local economy. They develop modern transportation system, the highway, the motorways, the air aviation investment, and so that the people can travel faster and more convenient. So the network in the south of the transportation is different from the north and the northeast because they would like to stimulate the new form of economic development. It is a tourism. When they said, okay, the natural features in the south, the beach, the islands, and the food, all that is the magnets that can bring the tourists from everywhere to visit the south of Thailand. And anytime they would like to stimulate the local economy faster. And you can see in fact, it's not a new issue. This issue has been there for centuries. When some people said, okay, if we follow the experience of the traders some centuries ago, that they would like to cut short the trade route from from Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. Why don't we have the artificial canal from to connect the both seas? And that's why during the past 10 or 20 years, many papers said about the proposal for the canal project. I don't know. They said this is a big benefit for the Thai society, particularly the people in the south. They said, okay, this would change. That would have impacts on many things. It's not only on the economic local economy, but the big change will be on the urban system in the south, particularly around the lake, Songkhla Lake. And the only reason why they try to push this project going on, would like to see the implementation next year, next 2 years, as soon as possible, because they always mention about the figures. The figures are not different from year to year. They said more than 100,000 chips sell through the state of Malacca every year. And they said they are going to have the new problems of the congestions in the narrow Strait of Malacca. And Singapore, in fact, is still the center of the maritime transportation, the largest and the best maritime service center compared with other port towns in the region. I don't know, but perhaps maybe the 4th or the 5th largest maritime centers in the world. And I always left. Anytime I went down to give lecture in the South, I always left the big question about the future, about the future of many cities. The city of Songkhla and Hat Yai may be the good examples. What they are thinking about the future, what they would like to be, what they would like to see their cities and their towns in terms of, all right, it should be the good city. Many concepts and many theories about urbanization are now available in the classroom, in the global theater, like somebody said, the green city. But when I teach at the university, I teach another course for the engineering class. Yes, I will start next week, the engineering class in Ho Chi Minh City. It is about the green infrastructure that can be a good alternative for the city in the future. That they have to think more carefully how to bring back the good and effective infrastructure to the city that should be environmentally sound, do not destroy or disturb any ecological systems at the local level or even in the regional level. Because today we have a new courses. It's about regional ecology. And I hope that the new concepts like urban sustainable development goals and many movements around the international theaters could stimulate the ideas and to change the policies of the urbanization, how they can develop the urban areas wisely and without any problems in the future. They have to think about the next generations. It's not only about how to stimulate the local economy by pushing new things in the city, try to make more money, try to increase the level of the local income. Sometimes money is, yes, it is needed for the people who live in the city. But I found that it's not only about the money, but it's about the happiness. If they have my students who live in the city of Bangkok, they got a lot of money, but just simple question: are you happy? Most of them told me that no, they are not happy. They work very hard in Bangkok. They can earn a lot of money, but at the same time they have to pay for transportation, for any cost of living in the big city like Bangkok is very high. And I have a good question to my students. And then how much you left? How much you have still have money in the pocket by the end of the last day of the month? Many students told me that, oh no, I don't have enough money left in the pocket. So I hope that the big city is not only Hat Yai or Songkhla or big city like Phuket and Chiang Mai. Phuket is a good example that the cost of living is very high, maybe higher than the same amount of money that you pay in Bangkok. Not because of it is a tourist city, but also everything around you is costly. I hope that in the future of the town and cities in the South could think twice and should have a better choice how to live in harmony with nature, with your neighbors, with the happy day of every day is a happy day for them. When I finished my presentation, most questions came from the back of the conference rooms and what should be the best solution. I said, okay, the best way to reduce risk, any risk, landslide risk, flood risk, erosion risk, this is very easy that avoid and stay away from the areas where there is a risk. So when you have to develop anything, a house, from a small house to the big buildings, hospitals, schools, stay away, avoid any development on the risk area with the high risk. That's a very easy, very simple way to reduce the risk. And not we are not talking about only the problems of environmental damages. At the same time, we have to think about how to restore the nature, how to restore the environment, how to bring back the good things to the nature, to the environment. And it's not about how to do the good things in the city, in the town, but you have to think about further to the upstream, environment, to downstream environment. You cannot forget any one of these components of the nature. You have to think as the whole picture in the perspective of the natural environment, and then you can understand the whole picture, how the systems are working, and then you can solve the problems at the good points. So far, I am working for the German organization. You may know this organization in your country, GTZ. Today, it changed the name and has become GIZ. It is a government, in fact, not 100% officially German government offices. It's a private sector too, private get involved too. Next year, I will start this new project, which is really, to me, it's a challenge because we are moving away from the traditional way of solving environmental problems. We are taking into account of ecological systems as the basic movement. We call it ecosystem-based adaptation. That means we are bringing the domains of the ecological system, bring everything that is a good domains of ecological concern, take into account into the process of urban planning, into the process of any development in the cities. And we have a good expectation that these kind of attempts, it is really big attempts to do something as a measure against the climate change crisis. I know that it's not easy to work on this subject or this kind of project, but we have to do. No matter how difficult it is, we have to do. I hope that next year I could come back and share my experience, what I could get from this project. I hope that the German experts, I try to contact the well-known German professors to join this project. And it could be that they are arranging the schedules that when they can come to Thailand. And I submit the proposals with the alternatives. I present around 10 towns from the north down to the south. And they will select just 2 or 3 towns as a pilot project, as a demonstration project. If any town in the Songkhla Lake could be chosen, that would be the good news for you. And many people ask me, what do you mean by that? Ecosystem-based adaptation. I said, look at this picture. Some towns in Japan and in Taiwan, they have started already. If you look at the divergent channel, like compared with the case of Hat Yai, the case of Japanese towns and Taiwanese towns, they don't put the concrete walls along the diversion channel or the river, but they try to bring the natural features, local species of plants, fish, and any kind of living creatures, including macroinvertebrates. That means shrimps, turtles, or any small fish, put them together, make a ecological systems naturally in the town. At the same time, they create the green space in town. This we call it the green corridor. The green corridor that the people can have a short route from their houses, from the residence, to buy things in the nearby markets. They don't have to take the bus or tram or taxi, but they can ride a bicycle. That this bicycle is a part of the green infrastructure that we introduce in terms of the green corridor. They can have a green corridors everywhere if they can have a prepared good space, enough space in the city and towns, and that in the evening the people in the town can enjoy the greenery scene, the greenery environment. They don't have to go to the public parks far away from home, but just 5 or 10 minutes walk, they can touch and they can feel and they can see the green pictures, not far from their house, not far from their apartments. And as I tell you that ecosystem-based adaptation is my challenge next year. My teams, not myself, but my research team challenge next year. I'm asking you, what is your challenge? I think this is the end of my presentation. Shall we open the floor for discussion? I think I can keep the schedule on time. Yes, please. If you have any question.
So you guys have any question? I think the best time, this best opportunity to talk to Dr. Thongchai. He's very experienced urban planner. The one you mentioned about green city or something.
Hello, sir.
Oh, Thongchai, you have any question?
Yes, I do have a question, just mainly based on how to change that of sorry, I'm trying to find the right word, but
Let me show the face so that Dr. Thongchai will see you. Open your camera so that Dr. Thongchai will see you.
Oh, okay. So, sorry, I do apologize for my dressing. We actually have a public holiday here today, and so.
Okay. Please yourself.
Okay. Hello.
Look smart like that. Yeah, relax.
Hello, sir. I just had a question regarding what you'd an approach that you'd have to change the perspective of that of private sector investors. We have the same problem here in Samoa, where there are certain urban areas that we shouldn't be developing on, but we actually have no laws in place that forbid the investment of private sector agencies or private sector companies to develop on such land, because it's land that they've purchased by right, despite giving them warnings, and it's proven that them developing on such areas has a massive impact on the local communities around them, especially in our urban areas, because we're a very, very small island and we don't have many urban areas, just the one that's within our one capital city, our main town area. Would you have I would say some advice? Would you have any advice on how to really change that perspective and have us as public servants really push that initiative to change and make harder policies?
Yes. When I was young, I had the same problems like yours. And after I got the promotion to be the head of the projects, I changed my style, that we have a good class in the European universities. When I was master's student, the title of this course, it is urban psychology. Hello, you hear me?
Yes, sir. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. It is good for you that if you understand this subject, urban psychology. The psychology means you have to understand something deep inside their minds. When I start with the project with the development programs where the private sector can play the greater role than the government sector. What I did, I made an appointment, informal meeting with the private sector and talked nicely. We had coffee together, we had tea together, not only once, sometimes twice, or maybe 3 or 4 times. I call it the first step of the soft measure. The soft measure to explain, to tell the stories to the private sectors, why we have to do that, why we have to keep it green, why we have to think about the nature. And if they accept the soft measures from from my team as a representative from the central government in Bangkok, that's fine. They follow our advices, our recommendations. All right, that's simple. But in the case that the private sector, all right, some of them may be stubborn, maybe strong believe that no, it must be the private sector who changed the city, who built the big buildings. I turn to the stronger measure, the hard measure, because the central government and the local government, we have to work together. And in many cases, if it is a big project of infrastructure development, the local government has to ask the money from the government in Bangkok. That's the strong measure that we can control the private sector. If you don't follow our regulations, if you are stubborn and don't want to keep the good environment, we will not provide public infrastructure to your land, to your projects. And that is a good example. But sometimes the private sector is cunning. They don't follow the regulation. They don't follow the disciplines, social disciplines. And the big case just, very scandal in Bangkok a few months ago, when the private sector has developed the big tower in the heart of the city of Bangkok. But they did not follow the regulations. And all right, when we found that, all right, this is not the nice decision, and the private sector did not care. They continue to build this big tower, and they tried to convince the city of Bangkok that this is a good project. This is a good opportunity to increase the activities in the downtown of Bangkok, and the private sector can make a big profit. I remember 2 or 3 billion baht within 5 years. But during the 5 years, some NGO in Bangkok went to the court and submit the paper that the court and had to do something with this case. And lastly, the Supreme Court made a decision, reached the verdict that the building that the private sector developed the tower is illegal. So there's a big news on the paper, on the newspaper, on the TV in Bangkok, in Thailand. So what I could tell you is you can start with the soft measure by talking to the private sector. And after that, you have to, at the same time, you have to increase the legal power from the government to have a stronger measure to back you up that if they do anything wrong, don't follow the principle how to make the society. Don't forget that they have to think about the public interest, not the private interest. When we are working on the urban scale, the public interest should come first, not the private sector interest. Hello.
Thank you, sir. Your advice was well received. I guess as an officer, I haven't been working in the public sector for too long, but I can confirm that such measures, as you've mentioned, between the soft measures and hard measures, I don't think they're really in practice here in Samoa, but I do hope to implement that sometime soon.
The very important for you is you have to tell your boss, your government, that legal measures should be the last choice. Should be the last choice. We would like to see the cooperation between the private and the public sectors work together. That's the best way. We don't want to force anybody to follow our policies, but if they don't follow the public policies on the urbanization, the good way to develop the good cities, you need the strong measures, legal measures. Like in the case of Thailand, many big buildings were knocked down after the private sector did not follow our regulations. And I had to write many papers to explain why the judge reached the verdicts like that. So that is very tired work. Write a paper against the private sector. The punishment is not nice for anyone. And the private sector, they don't enjoy this kind of solution if they have to knock down their buildings. Yes. Next question, please.
Any other colleagues have any remarks on what you heard from Dr. Thongchai? I think we most of us have similar problems, like Dr. Thongchai mentioned, because these are to do with benefits of the land developers, so forth, and we always have problems. We have so many laws. We have we call municipalities law, and then the national law, environmental impact assessments, and so forth. But still, most people try to get away with some loopholes of the law, and at the end they know the wrong setting of the buildings and the towers. Even the government departments itself, sometimes they get a wrong planning of putting the roads and so forth.
Yes.
But at the end, they know that they have some experience, some evidence of the impacts they have.
Mm.
They put a road to block the waterways, and a lot of land development, a lot of buildings which obstruct the waterways and cause a lot of troubles. I mean, in Thailand, in the past, like more than 50 years ago, we never had a heavy flood damages. Of course, we've been having a lot of rains 1,000 years ago, but the rain comes down and goes to the waterways and then it's gone to the sea. But now, towns have something to block the waterways. So recently we had floods in almost every city in the whole country because of this unplanned urban sprawl, whatever you call it. So I think that was probably in Samoa, you in the stage of, even you have problems, but you only in early stage. But when the development it's gone sort of overshooting before we know it. All the impacts already occur, and this thing is very difficult to. It's possible to prevent it before it occurs, but once it happens, it's sort of very close to irreversible impact. So I don't know. You probably have the similar experience.
Let me give you.
Sorry, sir.
Yes, just last week, because I'm sitting as the planning committee. A good example that you from Samoa, just ask, this is the case of the public sector, many government offices. I made a decision and gave orders on behalf of the planning committee members to a province in the northeast, Surin, that you may not believe that more than 10 buildings must be knocked down within the next 5 years. The planning committee where I'm sitting have a absolutely conclusion that those buildings, around 10 buildings, must be knocked down and moved away from the fringe of the waterways in the province. And the governor said, all right, this is a legal control. If the government sector, some office buildings occupied by Department of Justice, even the Department of Justice, they have to knock their buildings. This is a good example that we have to use the strong measure sometimes. So don't be afraid. I have done a lot, knocked down many buildings.
Hello, thank you, sir. I hope to work towards that as I work my way up in the corporate ladder.
So maybe if we don't have any more questions or much more to discuss, maybe we can close the session, if you like. Is there any, what will we have a country paper this afternoon?
Hello, sir. I believe I'm scheduled for Monday afternoon.
Oh, for Monday. Okay. So
Yes, sir.
probably this afternoon, John or Chow will raise some issues for discussion. So, so thank you, Dr. Thongchai. I think it's very, you got into a very a lot of information on the route, hold on, Nathan got your hands up. You have any comments, remarks, Nathan?
Sir, sorry, just have a question because the presenter yesterday, was it Mr. Panpat? He presented a certain framework for disaster risk reduction, the Sendai framework. I'm just wondering if there is such framework or methodology used in urban planning that is adopted worldwide.
All right. So far, we have many regulations to prevent, to reduce, to protect. When we have to classify and identify the risk areas and tell the public that the people who live in the province should get information where they should avoid to settle down the to stay away from the risk. And in some cases, we have classified the area where villages have been there. In some cases, to me, I submit the proposal to the government that if we have to, that means we have to move some houses away from that areas, and the government will pay. And that's not the right decision. We have to prevent at first, identify the risk areas, and explain why the areas around their houses have been classified as a risk of what, and how bad and how critical it is to stay there. And the information is really important. In the case that if they don't listen to the government, we try to introduce the second measures, force them to have the insurance. Insurance, we call it the risk transfer. The risk transfers means the people at the local level, no matter how they live in a house in the big building. If we classify and identify that area as a risk areas, if they don't move out, if they don't do anything, follow the government's recommendations, they have to buy the insurance. Like my house, I bought the insurance to guarantee that my house will be safe. If the storm, if the typhoon hit my house, the bank and the insurance company will pay me. I don't have to blame anyone, but the government just let the people buy the insurance. I hope that the Asian countries, there are very few countries that have this kind of regulation. Japan and Taiwan, not Vietnam, not Cambodia. But in Thailand, I tried to introduce this measure, force the people who live in the risk area to buy insurance as a part of the risk transfer. Understand the risk transfer?
Jonathan?
Yes, sir. How about? Hello, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that answer, sir.
Yeah. It just adds, unfortunately, this is, let me see. I just got information in my computer, but they provide information in Thailand for the whole country, actually, and the risk map against the flooding to let everybody to look at it before they buy the land, actually. So now with that information, you can look at this map, and you know what's the risk of getting flood. So you know that determines the land price. But it's very recent information that most of the people can get. So again, thank you, Dr. Thongchai,
You are welcome.
for your very informative presentation. I hope this can be useful for most of the participants in applying your basic knowledge for urban planning. So thank you all for attention. So we close the session this morning, and we see you again at 1 o'clock with John.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, sir.
See you in the afternoon.